Welcome, everybody. Here we are, Family Worship Center. I'm with the one and only doctor, pastor, comedian, author, teacher, tennis player,
podcast star,
Dr. Courtney. He's a teaching pastor here at Family Worship Center. And we want to do this once a month where we can kind of informally talk about just things that we're teaching on. Pastor Mike teaches on Wednesday nights and orchestrates all of that and different people coming in and teaching and usually unpacks what I'm teaching on Sundays and goes a little bit deeper and further into that. And so we thought we'd go a little long form, take the next 20 or 40 minutes once a month and just talk about what God's just kind of saying, what God's doing and how to navigate and apply the things that we're doing and teaching on here at Family Worship Center. And so, and so we came out of a time of 21 days of prayer and fasting. We had our locale conference. Pastor Gabriel Gauthier was here.
That was good.
It was amazing.
That was really good, yeah.
Yeah, and then now every time I get into February, I always feel practically and then also like an unction from the Holy Spirit to teach on. I mean, you got Valentines Day, but I also want to just teach and emphasize love and relationships and marriage and parenting and family. Every time I get around February, I'm like, that's what I want to do. That's what I feel excited about. And I think it's because it's something I am really passionate about. And I think you are as well. You know, you're passionate about your family. And more than that, I think it's something that I have heard just amongst staff and church members. They're just, even first-time guests, even this past Sunday, we are so thankful that you were talking about just the family.
Yeah,
you're talking about, and there's a lot of things going on in the world. There's a lot of things going on in our nation. There's a lot of different things that we could be talking about that have a tremendous amount of merit. But when you pull all the layers away, we're kind of left with just each other and our spouses and our kids. And what are we going to do in the midst of just a lot of toxicity in culture, it's never good news on the news, and so, what's your initial thoughts, Pastor, just like talking about this, coming out of time of prayer and fasting and just how that just kind of knits together, I think really well.
Oh, it does. And I thought, Pastor Bryce, one of the things that really hit me Sunday that just sets the tone for all this, you said that the enemy is he's not after the nation. He's not after our city. He's not after our schools. You said it so well. He's after our families. And so you do a great job always, just by virtue of the station of life you're in, of bringing your family into the congregation and introducing us to them in your messages. But to take a time specifically and intentionally to say, we have prayed hard. We've got our hearts ready. We're hearing from God. And the first thing we want to say when we come out of that is, God help our families. I think that's powerful, strategic. I think it's exactly where we need to be as a church. And as you said, I think it's what our people are hungry for. They want to know the nuts and bolts of how am I going to be a better husband? How am I going to be a better mother? How am I going to be as a grandparent? How am I going to be more supportive as a grandparent? So I think prayer and fasting and family month are absolutely hand in hand. Just a perfect combination.
Yeah. And again, we get into February, you talk about love and you talk about relationships. I'm trying to think of everybody because not everybody's in the same season that I'm in.
Different kinds of family.
And so, you have people who are like, I need help raising grown kids. Like I need help raising adults, or I need help raising grandkids, or I need help raising, whatever season they're in. And so for me, what is your unction towards me or like your guidance of, as you're talking about, I got a 6.5-year-old and a 3-year-old and one on the way. And so, it's really easy to talk about all those things. Sarah and I have been married for 13.5 years. And I guess, I don't know, just kind of talk and just inform, just what has worked so far for Sarah and I. And I'm not the...
You're the expert on you and Sarah.
I'm the expert on is that we are absolutely best friends.
Yeah,
there's good. No question about, I have, and it's important to have other, like for me, brothers, so to say, not just like biologically, but just in my community, spiritual
brothers,
brothers and friends here on staff and friends in the church and friends in ministry. That is very, very important, but it's also very, very important to keep your spouse as a best friend. And I think any successful marriage that's doing really well is that because the spouses are truly best friends. They can talk about anything. They want to talk about their spouse to their spouse about their deepest whatever fears or struggles or insecurities. I mean, I can go to Sarah with all of those things and know I'm not going to, I don't know, be tarred and feathered and made fun of or any of the, I know I am going to be supported. And so I guess in all of that, there's a sense of security. There's a sense of safety. There's a sense of I'm not going to just, I don't know, just be shamed and exposed. Like I have someone in my life, my spouse, who's my best friend, who's going to help me walk through whatever I'm going through and vice versa. And then we're going to get through this. We're going to work through this. And so I don't know. Is that like on point with?
Yeah, I think, no, you're entirely wrong. That's it. Yeah. No, I think it's exactly right. And it's the most important thing. And it's usually the first thing to go just because of, again, seasons of life. We get busy. We're building careers. When Josh was born, my oldest son, Doris and I quit talking to each other. I would say, Josh is 2 months old, and I'd say, Josh, tell mommy we're going to be late. And Doris would say, Josh, tell daddy to just shut up and give me time. And we stopped talking to each other. I do think that we can get so busy that we forget to do that, but it's absolutely crucial. And I think you use a great word there. I always say this is the gospel according to me, but I'm sure people smarter than me have come up with this. I think that from the creation, there's something that God puts in the DNA of men that what we need is identity. We need value. We need worth. And so we go to parties and we introduce ourselves. Hey, what do you do? We get our identity. And our wives are so important to give us that. I'm so proud. When you preached this past Sunday, I was so proud of you. I'm so grateful for the way that you help at the house. So they name our identity. They give us whether we like to admit it, we feel better when our wives are on our arms because we just have identity.
Absolutely.
And what God placed in the DNA of our wives in creation, I think, is a desire for safety, to be protected, and in this kind of quasi-chauvinistic, sensitive world, that maybe that's gone out the window. But I think it's still true that when you can say to your wife, "I'm here to take care of you," and you really did a great job of that Sunday, talking about being the defender and being the one that. I laughed how you said, when we go in a restaurant, I'm looking around, I'm going to take somebody out. If they I thought, no, that's my pastor. He's not going to take anybody out. He loves Jesus. He's not going to do that.
No.
But there is that nobody else can give that to Sarah except you. Nobody else can give that to Doris except me. Yeah. And so to maintain that, and that's what friendship looks like. Yeah. For me, friendship looks like her valuing me and giving me identity. For her, friendship looks like me providing a safe place for her, spiritually, emotionally, financially, physically, in every way, just helping her to know that she's taken care of. Yeah. And again, I think that our society as a whole and our church in particular, our young men and older men, our young women and older women are asking, how do I do that? What does that look like? Give me some examples of that. Let me have some role models. And you do a great job for those who have been married 13 years, and hopefully some of we older people can do it for people who've been married longer than that. So I think it's one of the things I'm proud of our church about. Maybe it's why we're called Family Worship Center. Maybe that has something to do with it.
Yeah. And a lot of people have said, like, are you going to change the name, different things like that? And I've thought about that. But at the same time, we got a good thing going on. The church has had a good thing going on, even as I, stepping into this place after Pastor Eddie. And, it's a respect.
Who's Pastor Eddie?
Pastor Eddie Turner,
I think I remember him.
He's amazing.
If Pastor Eddie's watching this, cut that part out.
And so, yeah, it's a respect. And I love, we are definitely like a house of worship and of course, Murfreesboro Center, Tennessee,
Yeah.
and family's a big deal to us. And so even just from some of the first time guests, again, saying, man, I just love the emphasis on the family. We appreciate that. And that's a huge help to us.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it's good friendship with your spouse is critical. And so if that's not there, that's got to change. And then obviously there are people who have had divorces and they're not with, and so there's two different sets of parents raising kids. And so there's also that dynamic
Right.
and different things like that. And I don't know anything about how to navigate that other than just collaboration of trying to meet in the middle and work together and thinking. I think what you talked about, even the little bit I got out of your Monday Matters, is conflict and how to navigate just tough conversations. Not taking it personally, thinking about the kids that are involved and things like that. I really can't go into really much more detail other than collaboration and working together as it pertains to things like that.
Yeah.
But
I think I think, again, hopefully we demonstrate as a church, and I think we need to articulate that there is a level of acceptance that's necessary. Probably, we might get on shaky ground here, but probably in this day and age and in this culture, more than any other time, to demonstrate that we can be accepting, that we can be tolerant. We use some words that almost become negative words, diverse, those kinds of things. There's something about recognizing lots of different families, lots of different styles, single people as families, divorced people as families. As you said, grandparents who are literally raising their grandchildren, all of that. And, there are a lot of things that in our culture we struggle with biblically, but still to find a way to say, we want to accept you. Now we're going to speak the truth and we're going to tell you what Jesus says, but to accept the family. You are family, or whatever you look like, you're family. And we want to try to help negotiate that. And as you said, collaborate. I think that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Let me ask you a question.
Yes.
You're a pastor, but in many ways just kind of a young professional. You're relatively early in your career, building a platform, doing a great job of that. How do you navigate keeping Sarah as your best friend, keeping the girls important to you, and also being committed to this call of God upon your life? That's a difficult thing that I think, whether it's a banker or a lawyer or working their way up at Nissan, I think there's a lot of men in our church that are struggling with that same kind of thing.
Yeah. For me, it's, you kind of get that question or you see that a lot. And how do you balance? How do you, juggle? And really, it's not so much of a balance or juggle to me. It's just, I am a husband and a father. That is just a main priority to me.
Good.
And all these other things just kind of help, be able to do that, and, financially and different things like that, provide for my family. And so that's first and foremost to me, like the biggest deal. And so everything else is just kind of secondary and just right there. But for me, that is just first. And so I talked about it in a podcast before, but I really don't want to do a lot of evenings away from home. I try to make sure those evenings are at home, dinner table with the family. I try not to do 2 evenings in a row.
Good.
And then 3 evenings in a row is basically a huge red flag of just there needs to be some change. Things are getting out of balance. And so, 3 evenings in a row without spending time at the dinner table with your family, whether out to eat or at home, to me is a red flag of, okay, we need to make some change. 2 nights in a row, you know, you're kind of on the
happens,
cusp
yeah.
there. It happens, emergencies or different things like that. But really, I guess practically, I try to explain it in that way. I think that kind of makes sense for most people if they're working just kind of your typical 9 to
That's
5.
good. Yeah.
It's just, man, I've already spent 2 nights in a row. I've got to reschedule this third thing, or I've got to delegate some things. I'm doing too much. I'm doing above and beyond, and now it's hindering. And so,
Yeah, and you said Sunday, that not only makes you a better father, makes you a better pastor. You do a better job preaching on Sunday and caring for the flock when you've been faithful to your family and taking care of them. So that's good.
Yeah.
We had a good friend that passed away last week, and Doris and I attended the funeral by Zoom. It's interesting. You can do things like that now.
Yeah.
They were in Ohio, and we attended by Zoom. But one of the things that was said at the funeral that was really good, that she said, her name was Marcella, and Marcella always said that this is not a gas station where you come in and get your tank filled and then you drive off again. We're going to spend time at the supper table, and they notoriously spent time talking and laughing and telling stories and those kinds of things. So those evenings that you're spending with the girl, I think that's invaluable. It's going to pay dividends way down the road. So good.
Yeah. It's especially the season I'm in now, that I feel like that's a really big deal. Very formidable years, and so not going to get that time back.
Yeah.
And next thing you know, they're going to be with friends doing things. You know,
There'll be a time when they don't want that.
Yeah.
You have to do it. Yeah.
So I'm gonna invest in that as much as I can while I can. It's a small window of time. And so, just keeping family, no more than 3 nights in a row. And I think in kind of this whole series this month that is how you make a house a home.
Right.
Otherwise, it's just a house. Otherwise, it's just not really what God intends it to be. And so just like with Adam, he had a God above him. He had things to take care of beneath him, but the soil and the animal, cultivating, not tending and watching over, but then, God wanted a family around him. I just think it's just all that's so interesting, and is God said, hey, it's not good for man to be alone, when he had God and he had all of his needs met. And so to me, that it goes back to just this primal, just kind of state that we truly are. If you pull everything aside, got God, I got all my needs met, but I'm still alone because I need.
Right.
God said, this isn't good. And it was, to me, it was paradise. It's perfect. You got God, you got everything. No, you are there's something missing. And so, man, it can be easy in the middle of being very successful or whatever is going on in someone's life to forget that you're still very alone. I got God and I'm taking care of what I need to take care of. No, you need to be with the family.
Good. Yeah. It's hard for me to be involved in a conversation without quoting my favorite heretic. I'm always quoting Richard Rohr, and he is a heretic, but I still like him. But he said Genesis 1 would be translated better. In the beginning was the relationship. God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit. God is defined. The very first thing is defined as relationship.
Yeah.
And I think that then is demonstrated in his creation of the family, that we are made for relationships. It's not good for man to be alone. We're made for each other, and so to nurture that and to take care of that is not just a social idea or a relational idea, but it is a deeply spiritual idea that I am probably no closer to God than I am to my family. Again, whatever that family looks like might look different, but I think we're doing a good job of that in this church, building a good culture.
And the times that we live in, it's toxic. There's a lot of things going on in the world and in culture. And I'll say this, 2016, the Trump, Clinton, just all of that, Juby was just born. She was just a few months old.
Who'd she vote for?
Juby, I won't say. And so I've never felt super. I've always voted as soon as I could.
Yeah.
I've never really. Obviously, when we got to that juncture, it was like this is there was just so much.
Yeah, yeah.
Both sides. It was very polarizing. Of course, ever since it's been very polarizing
Yeah.
politically. But I remember just kind of now I'm going to I'm going to go vote, and I got my little one with me, and I'm kind of thinking okay. This is kind of a big deal,
Right.
I'm starting to think. I'm not just thinking about the next 4 years. I'm thinking the next 20, 30 years. What is my daughter about to grow up in?
Well, that's
how's
good.
this?
Yeah.
And of course I walked in there and there were some people there, and I think somebody said, think about who you're think about your vote, and who you're holding, and I'm like, you don't have to tell me, whatever. And I know they were trying to be kind and everything like that. But I remember going back home and sitting in the driveway, just still a little really anxious,
Yeah.
And really worked up. And I think just with news and with social media and just all the things that were just being blasted during that time, and just feeling why am I feeling so overwhelmed? And I just remember, the whole time I'm thinking about Juby, I'm thinking about how am I going to raise my daughter in all of this? And I just remember the Lord just speaking to me saying, Bryce, you're the one that's going to raise your daughter, not who you just voted for.
Yeah, that's good.
And I just remember sitting in the driveway in my car, just kind of exhaling, okay, yeah, I'm going to be okay. Who I just voted for is not going to come and dictate and raise, my child and different things like that. I am responsible for my home and my family. And that's huge. And then, so I think in all of this, I hope, and hearing that, I even kind of share that with my own personal life group, is that, people would, just like with the spy balloon and things like that, all that stuff's a big deal, but then get really, really serious about their address, their family. And just like Adam, I feel like those primal things were just showing affection and protection. It was those are just two things. Of just, man, I'm gonna love and protect, and I'm going to be that for my family. And I think in all of that, it's really, really, really easy to begin that process of turning a house into a home, and that this is my responsibility. I see things in my child. I'm going to cultivate. I'm going to show affection. I'm going to protect them. There are things that are not allowed, and so yeah.
That's good. It really brings up that important word of responsibility. God's in charge of this. God's going to take care of my kids. My wife has to do her part. All of that, but I began to be aware of the responsibility that I have to nurture and to serve and provide for and all of those things. And I think it's part of why you see people return to the church when kids come along. They begin to feel responsible for that. I know you're a great fan of Chris Hodges. I was listening to Chris Hodges today while I was running. I like to work that in that I was running today. I just got but while I was running, I was listening to Chris Hodges, and he said an interesting thing that I think maybe Barnes, I'm not, some pollster has said that since the pandemic, there's this great increase, like 75%, 3/4 of the people when interviewed said they were leaning more towards spiritual things. They had a more interest, they had a deeper interest in spiritual things since the pandemic, just this vast increase. And I think part of that is this awareness that I have a responsibility for my family, and the world's a scary place. And what am I going to do about that? It's a golden opportunity for us to say to people, we may not be perfect at this, but we know the guy that wrote the book, and he's pretty good at telling us how to raise a family. And so it's just it's good.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's just important, just we got to get the family thing right. We just got to, especially as a church, and there's a lot of pressure in that, wherever you're at in your season of life, whether you're older and your spouse has passed on, or now you're kind of a part of raising your grandkids, and maybe you don't like how your kids are raising them and you would do things differently, and maybe you're where I'm at and you're just your kids, and they're 7 and 3, and then you got another one coming. You're kind of like all and commercials and YouTube and different things that we subscribe to, and then maybe you're newlywed, and man, some things are getting exposed in your relationship, different things that, that I felt like marriage does. It just kind of magnifies, strengths and weaknesses. And so a lot of that can be very difficult to navigate. And then if you're a single person and you feel like, man, everybody's a bunch of nutcases, nobody loves me. I can't, I'm never going to be able to figure this out in God.
Right.
So much of that is figured out. If you're single, just pursue God
to find
and find that community.
Yeah, find your identity in Him. Right.
Find Him, and if you're newlywed, don't be afraid to expose and to share and to communicate and talk through all the things that maybe you see in your spouse or you see in yourself, or things that you're proud of or not proud of. And then of course, raising kids, understand that you are the one raising your kids. It's not anybody else, but you are the one. And so you get to instill and encourage and cultivate the different values and the things that you want to see in your home. And then for an older couple that has a tremendous amount of wisdom and experience to say, this is how to do it and this is how not to do it. I think we can, I think the next generation loves that authenticity. They love to hear what's really going on, the behind the scenes and things like that. And then of course, even in our church, we have, those who are widows and are without their spouse, and we try to do our best to love on them and encourage them, and they do a great job of coming. And so you got to find that community. And so, I kind of ended on, and of just, that family, your address, your home. How do you, continue to turn that house into a home, your community? I don't know where I would be without the church home, God's house, and community of believers. And I know there's church hurt and those things are out there and they're real, but there are also a tremendous amount of just amazing, great churches. Not everybody's going on Google and giving 5-star reviews out, even though they feel very much like that. Right. It was typically the handful that said 1 star and this is why, and so
I love Google reviews.
Yeah.
Oh, brother.
Yeah. When there's like thousands that would say 5 stars, but they're not going to take time to get on there and, but I'm going to tell you how it is. And so there's just all of us as the family of God in God's house can just do so much good for everybody that's involved.
Right.
We have so many amazing just couples who have godly kids and godly grandkids. They have a lot to offer. I know there's a lot of new things and, technology and post-COVID and stuff, but man, they've also seen and experienced a lot as well that we can just gain. And so I don't know how anybody does it without the church family and finding that place. And my hope is that people would just establish that, that even if you can't figure out your address and making that a home, figure out where your home is on Wednesdays or Sundays, or whenever that church, establish that. Say, this is just, and that's what I love about an older generation. This is just like, this is where I went. This is where my mom went to church. This is where their mom went to. This is where we go to church.
Were you pointing towards me?
No.
It seemed like you were gesturing towards me when you said older generation.
No, not at all. Not at all. And so, but I love that about an older generation that is maybe a weakness in like a younger generation. They kind of were kind of in a state where people shop church and they kind of want to see what they have to offer. And I guess that's kind of understandable because you just got to find your place. But man, we do growth track here. We get people assimilated. But my thing is to them, I don't know how many pastors say this, but I say this. Hey, whether it's here or somewhere else, you gotta establish this church thing, this Sunday thing. You got to get this established. Yeah. You got to get around. I love my life group. They're a huge blessing to me. Just being in there, around the same age, dealing with the same things, and doing life together. I think that's how you turn a house into a home. Yeah. And so throughout this month, that's our Sarah and I's prayer, not just in February, but just as a body of believers, as a body of Christ, that we would just get this right. Yeah, it doesn't mean perfect, but somehow we would figure out how to agree and disagree and get through, different things, that we would just be able to do that as a family. Any thoughts or anything on that before we wrap up?
I think it gives me a wonderful opportunity to be good at being family inside my home with my children, my grandchildren. But it also gives me an opportunity to just be family.
Yeah.
And there are people that perhaps their family looks a little bit different. They don't have the connection. And as a church, we can be family to them. And,
Yeah.
kind of each individual has the opportunity to be family to somebody in the
Yeah.
church. It's always interesting when you look out and you'll see these connections being made of people. You think, oh, I wouldn't have thought of, those two little ladies sitting there talking to each other. I wouldn't have thought about them liking each other, but they
Yeah.
do. So I think making, and again, comes right from your sermon, making your house a home at 827 West Thompson Lane, but also making your house a home in this church, that each person to take a responsibility. I'm going to do my part to genuinely make FWC a home for people. I think that's good. And you really sealed the deal when you said, and you have to do that for eternity too.
Yeah.
I want my kids to be glad to come home at Christmas time and want to see Mimi and Poppy see. I want that to happen. I want my kids to be plugged into church and have connection in life groups. But none of that matters if I haven't. Doris's dad, who was just a saint, but he used to pray, only one life will soon be past, only what's done for God will last. And I just thought, man, I want my kids to know that's all that matters, is that they've got to make heaven their home.
Yeah.
And be, now that sounds like an old man, but it's still true.
No, it is true. It is true. And we had several, when we wrapped up service Sunday, we had several just raise their hand.
Isn't that neat? Yeah.
More than ever. And I felt like we were just talking about family, talking about home, and 21.
That's what I started saying. Isn't it neat? So you're preaching on the family.
Yeah.
And then people raising their hands and say, man, I got to get saved. That tells you exactly how important that is.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And so it's awesome. Thanks for tuning in. And hope this is a blessing to you. And God bless. We'll see you later.